Hello, Alison. Welcome to MS Warrior Podcast.
Thanks, Lee. Very glad to be here.
Tell me about yourself, what you're involved with.
So, my husband was diagnosed with MS 10 years ago, and 5 years ago he was lucky enough to get a stem cell transplant on the NHS. And this was really at a time where very few people knew about HSCT. And so in many ways he slipped through the net. So if he was applying to get it now, there's no way that he would be accepted, because he didn't have any active lesions. He didn't have any new T2 lesions. He wasn't seen as a good candidate. But as I say, he was only actually the 17th person to be treated in the UK. So he really did slip in under the radar. And I think probably that's a bit inconvenient now, because they want us to believe, well, it only works for relapsing, remitting, highly active.
That's the indication I got. Yeah.
Exactly. But we know, here we are 5 years on, and he's still on his feet, and he was going downhill very, very quickly. It was a really rapid trajectory for him. So we are certain he would have been in a wheelchair that same Christmas.
Right. You know, so what kind of state was he in before he had HSCT?
So his EDSS was 6.5. It is still 6.5.
Same as me.
Yeah. Now, he thinks he's probably got a little bit worse mobility-wise since he had HSCT, which, again, it's something that seems to be quite common with those that have got the progressive disease.
Is that part of the roller coaster or what?
No, because we're 5 years on now, and so the roller coaster part of it has finished. But what it seems to be is that with people that have got the progressive disease, their disability is already quite severe, then that damage is already done. And so I guess it's a little bit like if you had a war wound and you came back from the war and, you know, you have this problem with your leg or what have you, that's not going to get better over the years. It stopped because there's no more damage being done, but probably, you know, you're going to find your mobility gets a little bit worse as you age. So that's what it seems to be, and we're seeing that with a lot of people who have secondary progressive or primary progressive, that it halts the progression, but perhaps they get a little worse. But I think the important thing is that he is still EDSS 6.5. So he's not got so much worse that he's gone another point or another half a point on that scale, because he's still on his feet. So for us, that's a massive win, and it's why we campaign and do what we do. So we started AIMS charity 3 and a bit years ago now, and with a view to sharing the information about HSCT, making sure that people have got the facts and the true story, because unfortunately we're still getting this misinformation from neurologists, from MS nurses and so on. Only yesterday I was asked to help out with somebody who had a letter from their MS nurse saying, we can't possibly refer you to London because they don't treat progressive MS there at all, when it's very clearly in the criteria that yes they do if you tick the boxes.
Well, there's a fine line between for want of a better word, you're not bad enough. So, and then you're too bad. You're too far progressed. So
exactly, and I think what is a real scandal when you look at it sort of in real terms is the fact that only 0.2% of the MS population in the UK, that's over 130,000, only 0.2% have been able to access HSCT on the NHS. And I'm sorry, you're not going to tell me that 99.8% of the MS population is not suitable for this treatment. It's
something has got to budge at some point.
It has to.
The NHS is failing people, but not just MS, but a number of different conditions.
Of course, and we understand that there are budgetary constraints. We understand that this is not necessary. It's not the doctors that are responsible for this. They are just following protocol and procedure. They're doing what the legislation says. But something does need to change. And I think when you look at the situation, as I said, there have been 250 people with MS from England treated in England. But that completely excludes anyone from Scotland, anyone from Northern Ireland, anyone from Wales. So the English MS patients are saying this is terrible, we can't get HSCT on the NHS, but I think it's even worse for those in the rest of the UK, because they don't even get a chance to be referred for it.
Yeah.
It's just not happening.
Absolutely crazy. It's the criteria. We all know what the criteria is. You got to fail 2 drugs, and you've got to be relapsed. Well, in some cases, you do have to be relapsed and remitting, and other cases, well, like Charing Cross, for example, they told me, I said, oh no, we do secondary progressive. I said, wow, that'd be amazing. And then, a bit more time goes on. Of course, I'm waiting again. All I do is wait. So, and they turn around at least 3 months later and say, oh, we can't do it because you don't meet criteria.
And I think there's a big confusion as well about the criteria, Lee, because you look at Sheffield, and I think this is where a lot of the confusion comes in, such as the confusion that we had in this letter yesterday. They don't treat progressive MS. In Sheffield, no, they don't. They will only treat relapsing remitting MS. And that's because largely they were part of the MIST trials that were done by Dr. Burt in Chicago and all over the world. They were part of those trials, and those trials only concentrated on relapsing remitting. So they have that mindset, this is all it works for, that's what we're continuing with, we're happy with that. But in London, it is a different set of criteria. And the criteria for London specifically state that if you tick the boxes, so you have still got to have the lesions or the new T2 lesions, if you are progressive MS, that you are eligible. And that's a big problem that we need to overcome, because a lot of doctors and neurologists are saying, no, you're just not even eligible, just even to get past the first hurdle to go and see these people to see if you've got those lesions. And that's a big problem.
It begs the question as well that why don't they treat people like from the off when they're first diagnosed? I've been waiting years now, and obviously waiting years is progressed. And it's that waiting rather than treat me as soon as I am diagnosed. They wait and wait. The wait and see approach, if you like.
And I think that is a mindset now that is starting to sort of gather pace. This idea of treat it fast and hit it hard. Gavin Giovannoni, who's a very well-renowned...
I was just going to say that,
So this is what he is saying now. And interestingly enough, he is also saying, if I could choose any treatment, if I had MS, it would be HSCT. So that's really encouraging when you've got that coming from a neurologist, because there's been quite a lot of... there's been quite a lot from the neurologists not supporting it. So...
But somebody prominent like Gavin is saying that, and yet the NHS is still sort of deaf, if you like.
I don't know if it's a lack of communication, who knows what it is, but I know that London released some research just in the last couple of weeks, so that would be Hammersmith and King's. They looked at the cohort of patients that they've treated between 2012 and 2019, which included more than half who had progressive MS, and the results were very good. So, they can't keep dismissing the evidence that's out there. They can say, well, Mexico and Russia, that's anecdotal evidence, even though they have their own data. We don't really take that on board. But now that London is saying it, I think they've got to listen. They've got to start listening.
Yeah, definitely. It's it's going to come. Maybe not this year, maybe not next year, but at some point in the future, it's going to come.
I hope so. And of course, we at AIMS, the reason we don't have HSCT in our name, it stands for autoimmune and multiple sclerosis. And the reason we don't have HSCT there is because we hope that one day there will be a treatment, a cure, something that is less invasive than HSCT. But at the moment, HSCT is the one that has the most reliable results. It's the one that works for the overwhelming majority. Not everybody.
At the moment,
It works for everybody.
This is like people say, do you think there'll be a cure? I see that all the time on the internet. And it's like, no, I don't. And the reason why, because there's too much money in treatments. Like whether it be DMTs or DMDs, whatever.
There is. But I do wonder, I think that the community is starting to fight back. There are a number of groups that are springing up that are saying we're not satisfied with the amount of money that's going into certain charities for research and so on, but actually at the top there's a lot of money being paid to executives. They're taking a lot of money from pharmaceutical companies. You know, is there maybe a conflict of interest there? So I think that perhaps it will be community driven in the end. I mean, it seems to me, everything that I've read seems to suggest that epigenetics plays a massive part. And so that the idea with that is that your genes load the gun and environment pulls the trigger. And environment could be any number of things, from stressful situations to things that you've been exposed to. So many different things, head injuries, all kinds of different things like that. And the question is, well, why can somebody have a head injury under 20 and not develop MS, but somebody else does? And I think that eventually they will find it's a genetic thing, and it could be any number of things causing it.
At the moment, like you just said a minute ago, there's a combination of genetics and environmental. And, you know, when you hear that, you're like, what does that mean? You know, but the bottom line is they don't know yet what causes it. So until they find what causes it, they can't treat it properly.
Exactly. That's the difficulty.
So, it's just crazy, you know. It's but what gets me, and this can be controversial, but the NHS are pumping so much money into these drugs that they're like a band-aid. They're just keeping you going. They're not fixing anything. They're just keeping you going. And I've said before that I was on Ocrevus, and that's $64,000 a year. And I said to my neurologist, I said, how long do I need to take this for? He says, indefinitely. And I'm like, well, what, for the rest of my life? I'm only 41.
And at that price as well, and we know that HSCT cost the NHS around about £30,000. And as you said, these the disease-modifying drugs, treatments, they can run into tens of thousands of pounds every single year. So it is false economy. And what you said about the Band-Aid, that's exactly how I look at it as well. It's like a Band-Aid over a shark bite, isn't it? It's completely, you know, it's not sufficient, because all that these DMDs can do, the best of them, is to slow that progression down. They can't stop it in the same way that HSCT's been shown to do.
Yeah, but I mean, for me personally, is going on a DMD, whatever. It was a bit too late to do that. So I only got put on a DMD in 2019. So I was diagnosed in 2014. So all that progression has come in. So, you know, they just allowed that to happen through this wait and see approach.
Yes. But at the same time, you know, if you were diagnosed 5 years before they put you on anything, they would still see you as being fairly early on in the course of your disease, believe it or not. I mean, I know it doesn't feel like that to you, but that's a positive thing as well, because we know that the number one thing with HSCT that people say is, I just wish that I'd had it sooner. So, you know, with luck, you may very well see symptomatic improvements as well. I'm still on crutches at the minute. I'm not in a wheelchair,
but you know, that is my hope. That the one thing for a lot of people with MS is hope. You need hope. With what you're doing with the AIMS and stuff like that, what's the plan for AIMS in the future?
So at the moment, we've been awarding grants for, I think we're coming up for a couple of years now, James, for the awarding of grants. Got James in the background here, who, of course. So I think it's a couple of years. So that was a really big part of our plan. We wanted to be able to signpost, we wanted to be able to share that information, but we really, really wanted to be able to help with funding for people that are having to have HSCT, whether it's in the UK, they're getting it on the NHS, whether they're having it privately in the UK or overseas. You know, nobody asks for MS. So we don't means test the grants that we give, and they are to help people with the travel expenses, which are on top of.
So I think the next funding round is September, is it?
So the next funding round is September. I hope you're keeping your eye on it.
Yeah, I am.
And I'm ready to apply.
It's in my phone. It's an
I will give
alert
you a
in my
nudge
phone.
anyway.
So as soon as it gets September, I'll be straight on.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, actually, until you put the advert out saying the next funding round is starting now.
Yeah. Well, it will be all over our website. It will be on our social media as well. Good. So there'll be no getting away from it.
Yeah.
And I think probably in terms of sort of what do we want to achieve in the future, I think our chairman, Paddy, sums it up very well, because he says, I want AIMS to keep going until there isn't a need for it anymore. Yeah. And I think that sums up how all of us feel, because we want everybody to know about this treatment. We want everybody to have access to this treatment.
Definitely.
And hopefully in the future we want something else to come up that will eliminate the need for HSCT altogether. And there's so much research being done. It's
hopefully through what you're doing, which is technically, it's not a private company, but it's not the NHS. And for you're doing that, you're doing what the NHS should be doing. I
think certainly in terms of the sharing of the information, yes, because to us it's still surprising that several years on, we're still getting letters almost on a daily basis or emails from people who are saying, my neurologist has told me this, and it's the wrong information. It's still completely wrong. So it isn't just the people with MS that need to know about this treatment. The neurologists who sort of vaguely kind of knew about it and understood it from the past when it was a much harsher treatment with a much higher mortality rate, perhaps haven't all updated themselves. And they need to get on board with this as well. They need to find out about it, because they have a duty of care to their patients.
Definitely. I find that is what is missing at the minute. They're too busy looking at graphs or numbers rather than the actual patient. The people suffering, like James, like myself. That they're just not getting. We all pay taxes. So,
I think that's a really interesting point. That they are looking at what's the data say, what's it like on paper, but actually that isn't the reality of somebody who has MS. Let me tell you a story about something that Dr. Burt said a few years ago. He's told this story a number of times, but we were there one year when he said this.
Oh, right, okay.
And he was talking about a couple of patients that he treated with HSCT, and he says, one of them had relapsing remitting MS, the other one had secondary progressive MS. They were both EDSS 5. So I treated them both with HSCT, and in 5 years' time I went back to sort of see how they got on. So the patient that had relapsing remitting MS was now EDSS 3. Brilliant, what a success. The disability's been reversed there. And the patient that had secondary progressive MS was still 5. So it didn't work for him. And this audible gasp went up from the people who had MS or who had HSCT. And I asked him the question. I said, look, for a lot of people with MS, the halting of the progression is their goal. Of course, we all want to see a reversal of disability, but we know that that's not necessarily going to be an option.
I think I said on a couple of podcasts ago, it's just like the number one thing that I want personally is to stop the progression.
Exactly, and this is what the overwhelming majority of the people that we speak to say. I just don't want it to go any further. It's like having a fire raging in your body, and you just need to put that out, even if you're left with the damage. So he seemed quite taken aback, as if that almost wasn't something that he'd considered, and he said, yes, I do take that on board. And something that they do in Russia, which we were delighted to see when we were invited to speak at the HSCT International Conference that they had there in 2019, they actually produce a quality of life chart for their patients, which itemises, you'll see this probably, Lee, the symptoms that you have. And you'll know that we have done something very similar with AIMS. We produce a tracker that is in the different groups, and people can fill that in themselves, and they can chart how they feel before and after HSCT.
Yeah.
So, I mean, James has done this. I think dozens of people have used it since to sort of chart their own progress, because a lot of the symptoms that you might feel actually improve could be very small things. There was one lady who said, I can put my earrings in now. There was another lady who said, I can hold a glass of wine, and they might be things that you'd miss if you weren't tracking it. Yeah. And all of these things add up to quality of life. And if the EDSS hasn't changed, a lot of professionals are looking at that and saying, well, no, it's not working, but they're not actually speaking to the individuals about how they feel about their quality of life.
I'm just hoping, I'd rather the NHS research more on, I'm not sure which area does it, but researching more about remyelination and things like that. So even though you've had HSCT, that stopped it, but now it's remyelination.
Yes. Wouldn't it be wonderful if they did a trial for people that have undergone HSCT to then have that remyelination treatment? Because what we hear is that, yes, this can work for a period of time for people, but then they relapse a lot faster than those that have had HSCT. Yeah. But what if we've already reset the immune system? What if the remyelination might actually work better then? And they've not done any trials or tests to that effect as far as we know yet. But I think, again, it has to be something that's coming.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's we can all hope that develops, and the way you're doing that, in the meantime, that's just helping people stop it. So. Yeah,
and I think something that we would like to do in the future, we'd like to work with more medical organisations. We'd like to be able to present to more doctors, more neurologists, to sort of give them that patient side of things, which is exactly why we were invited to Russia to speak at that conference, to give the patient perspective.
I mean, again, this could be controversial, but do you plan to do any, I'm not sure how to say this, to be honest, but if you can, just lend weight to, because AIMS are quite well known now, and if they can lend weight to, because there's plenty of neurologists, like you've already said, technically in the pocket of pharmaceuticals, and that seems to be stopping a lot. So. Yeah,
I think it's less of an issue in the UK than it is overseas, definitely. But I mean, we just want to get the message over in terms of sort of what it is that the patient needs and what it is that the patient wants. And I do think that people are starting to listen with these multidisciplinary teams. People are working together. The haematologists are working with the neurologists, and that's what needs to happen. People need to be forming these partnerships, and we definitely want to be a part of that. We'd like nothing more than to be able to work with the MS Society as well at some point. I'm actually waiting from a call from them at the moment, because I know one of our members has been very vocal about, and several of our members have been very vocal about the information that's being shared there. So I've been promised that somebody's going to give me a call. I don't know what we're going to discuss, but that should be interesting as well. It's something we welcome, definitely.
That sounds good. I mean, you've got everything in place to go forward, and I wish you nothing but the best of luck moving forward. Hopefully grow AIMS to be the big thing. Now, it already is big, but to be even bigger, and hopefully, like say, working with a neurologist or whatever, just to be a team effort.
Yeah, I mean, we are a very small charity, we're under no illusions there, but we do have contacts on a global scale. We are working with the best haematologists in the world. We're in close contact with them. We've built up those very, very strong relationships. And I think something else that sets us apart is that we are run largely by people who have MS. 9 of our 11 trustees have MS themselves, so there is that empathy, there is that understanding that perhaps is missing when you're looking at corporate organisations.
Okay. So, I mean, this is quite personal, if you like, but it's hopefully for everybody too, which is like, what do AIMS plan to do with people like post HSCT? So, what can they do
Yeah, well, this
HSCT.
This is something that we're actually looking at now, because we are planning our strategy for what we want to achieve going forward.
Mm-hmm.
As you'll know, probably, we have just received a lottery grant, which is fantastic. So that's going to help us to launch a peer support project. So that's in the pipeline as well. And something that we've talked about quite a lot is what can we do to support people after they've had HSCT. So, and I think that's particularly necessary for those that have had it in Mexico and in Russia, because sometimes they do feel that they're floundering a bit when they get back, because they've not had the support to get out there in the first place, and then when they get back, it's almost as if they're a naughty child that has done something they shouldn't do.
I spoke to my current, I say current because I've hired several. I know. Well, when you're not getting anywhere, you know, they've got to leave, they've got to go. So, basically, I said, forget about HSCT. I know HSCT's out the window because I don't meet criteria. I know that, but I'm going to Moscow. What I want to know from you is, will you support me on the NHS for things like haematology and all that stuff?
And what did they say?
They didn't say anything.
Isn't that interesting? Because they do have a duty of care to you. They have got a duty of care to you.
I think I've said on another podcast that what I did follow up that. I said, you know, I think it was with somebody else that they said, no, don't bother with your. I think it was Matt Gilligan actually. He said, don't bother with your neurologist. Go straight to your GP. And we've found that a lot of GPs are incredibly supportive, also than the neurologists in a lot of cases. So that's been fantastic. If you've got a supportive GP who will do your bloods for you or will work with a local haematologist, that is fantastic. We did have one person a few years ago who said, well, my GP said that they're not going to do anything to help me unless I'm ill, you know, so they're not going to take my bloods unless I present and I'm not well. So I said, well, in that case, I think I would be presenting every Monday morning at 10 I was going to say, is MS not well?
Please take my bloods. You know, I think there are ways round it, but if they're not going to cooperate with you, I think you've got to get sappy with these things, haven't you?
Yeah. The only other option is private, which is quite expensive, but hopefully the GP will cover it. So
yeah. Well, in a lot of cases, they have been very supportive. But if they're not supportive, AIMS is here to help and be as supportive as we can. So we would say, do get in touch. Our support does not stop once you've had HSCT and you're back. We're here to help whenever you need it.
That's very good to hear for a lot of people. You know, there's somebody there. So
definitely.
Yeah. So thank you for your time. Thanks for your knowledge and your ongoing support through AIMS. I think AIMS are a great charity. I no longer I do, because I used to do a lot of fundraising for even when I was okay. I do a lot of fundraising, whether that be boxing or rowing or whatever. I used to do a lot of that, and that would go to either cancer research, which they've got more money than God. So, and it's just like that, or MS Society, later on. And I don't see a point in that. So I just send all my money to AIMS now. So.
We are so grateful for it, and every penny that comes into us goes to help people. It goes on the awards for their travel expenses.
Yeah, because, that's good to know. The money you're putting into AIMS, it's actually making a difference. I mean,
currently, we are all volunteers. How long we can sustain that, I don't know, because ultimately it may be that we need to employ people in order to grow as a charity. But certainly at the moment, we are all volunteers. We all feel really, really strongly that this is what we want to do. So none of us are being paid, and there's a lot of work that goes into it behind the scenes.
Well, you're all working very hard, and it's showing, it's paying off. whatever you want to call it. It's you're doing good work, you know.
Yeah,
so,
in fact, we're about to launch our newsletter, Lee. So that will be being launched on the 1st of September, which is the date that the next funding round opens. So if anybody wants to sign up for our newsletter, if you go to the website and you click on blog, you can sign up for it there, and that will come out to you. It's a free newsletter. We won't use your details for any marketing purposes or anything like that at all. You'll just get the newsletter. So that's written and that's ready to go. So that's coming out at the beginning of next month as well.
That's AIMS.org, yeah?
That's aimscharity.org. Yeah, www.aimscharity.org. That's us. And you can find us on Facebook and on Twitter and LinkedIn and Instagram, all of them. Yeah, we're there as well.
Thanks. Like I said, thank you very much for your time. You've been very helpful. It's good news going forward. So I wish you the best of luck.
And we wish you the best as well with your HSCT. I'm so glad.
October 13th. So
it will come around so quickly now. But we're looking forward to hearing all about it. So I hope you'll be doing your podcast.
I've already said I've got a little camera I can sight, so I plan to set up a little tripod when I'm there and do some interviews.
Yeah, it's going to be so helpful for people because we're always being asked, you know, can you point us in the direction of some blogs or who's done it and written about it. So it's always really, really useful, and it's a huge global community now. You know, over 3,000 people have been treated worldwide.
Yeah.
Well, that's just Russia and Mexico, 3,000. Yeah. So everything else is on top of that. That's just
do you support? I think it's India as well and somewhere else. So
at the moment, we don't support India because we have been made aware of a number of issues there from the start, and so it's not a centre that we support at the moment. I mean, that may well change. If you go to the main HSCT group on Facebook, which I think has over 16,000 members now, the information is on there about which centres are the ones that are the most reputable and the best safety profile.
Yeah. Okay. That's good. That's good news. So thank you very much for your time.
You're very welcome.